Today I would like to talk to you a little bit about the beginning days of Barney. A group of people came up with an idea and developed a series that now is the #1 most watched children's television program on PBS. And along the way I invited Dennis DeShazer and Kathy Parker to join me. And we developed what is today known as Barney and the Backyard Gang.
Barney and the Backyard Gang released its first and originally intended only home videos in 1988 and 1989. I have numerous videos on this channel speaking on the history and stories of these tapes that'll all be linked in the description. However, we won't be speaking entirely on that today. I want to talk about Barney and his design. Growing up, I attended a daycare every day outside of weekends, and this included after school. At this daycare, there were many VHS tapes lined up together on the bookshelf, and with only the color of the tapes being visible. From experience, we became very in tune with the Barney tapes all being the color white, as would be the standard in the years following. There must have been close to 30 of them. However, there was one Barney tape that was black for whatever reason. The label still containing the Barney home video symbol, but reading 3 wishes. I remember the times in which this tape would be put in and being absolutely horrified.
Barney is a dinosaur from our imagination, and when he's tall, he's what we call a dinosaur sensation. Barney! He's back!
Just scared. Not even in a "this is a monster" sort of situation, but more in a "what have they done to my friend" situation. Keep in mind, I was a very young child with no concept of time. I didn't know when this was made. All I knew was Barney the bright purple dinosaur. This Barney. At the time, internet access was not so accessible, to say the least, so research was not even a question. So when I saw this, it felt like a parody.
We're as happy as can be, with a great big hug and a kiss from me to you. Won't you say you love me too? Hi, kids!
I could not understand it. Who did this? How were they allowed to do this? This isn't Barney. It actually took a couple of years for me to eventually warm up to this different Barney. After a while, I became more and more intrigued, to the point that I'd ask to borrow the tape to watch at home and just play it again and again and again. It was so weird because even despite it not looking like the Barney I knew on the surface, the essence of Barney was still there.
It's okay, Tina. Oh, Tina.
When Barney, the first 3 shows, Barney was a true purple, and under the cameras, we didn't know that. He kind of went blue. So he looked much more blue than was the intention, and he was more angular.
Yeah, he's blue.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And you can see his
square.
nose is quite square.
Very square.
And his head is a little less rounded and
a
soft.
turquoise dot on his back?
Well, no, that's actually green. Bad
Oh,
turquoise.
see?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's green.
Everything encompassing created issues for production. These tapes would often use a blue screen effect. In 1988, it wasn't the most fine-tuned practice just yet, and also with Barney's colors as they are, you can already guess how that turned out. The performer inside would see through a large opening at the base of Barney's tongue, meaning that when the mouth is closed, the world goes pitch black. You can oftentimes see the kids holding Barney's limp arm and safely guiding him across the set. At the time, Barney was puppeted akin to Big Bird from Sesame Street, one arm in the arm, one arm in the mouth, or high up to blink the eyes. Very loudly.
But I like animals, especially the kind you can play with.
Because of the rigid material, you almost never see Barney doing any large jumps or leaps into the air, and one wrong move, it seemed, could have been enough for him to completely fall apart. Even just walking at times seemed to be somewhat of an issue. He was that primitive.
The funny thing about that particular costume, which I don't think you ever said, that costume was made out of foam.
Yeah.
And it was like on the outside, and it was basically just painted on the outside. It's very rough. So hugging him right there and rubbing your face, it was almost like sandpaper. And I imagine it was really hot inside, but that that costume, the ones they came out with later on were super nice, and they were the kind of the felt on the outside.
Yes.
Much nicer to touch and hug and for the kids and all that. But
Yeah, the costume developed a lot over the years, and that would have been David Voss, by the way.
That would have been David Voss
in
yes.
the costume.
Yes.
All this together created an imagining of this character that many today would have a hard time believing when looking back. In a way, he strangely felt more gentle. No overexcitement, no super giddy laughs, but a walking teddy bear, which, of course, was essentially the entire point. I realize now that growing up, and even to this day, I really just wanted to understand him.
It's an old pirate ship. Just like in the storybooks. I'm scared.
There's nothing to be afraid of. It's only make-believe.
And make-believe can't hurt you.
Right.
But the pirate ship sure looks real.
Let's go down and get a closer look.
What makes this iteration of Barney so special to me is the team's commitment to him, even after his tenure. He would only feature in these first 3 tapes as, again, the Lions Group, the franchise's creators, weren't sure if the series would take off. At the end of 3 Wishes, they would even add text to the screen reading "The End" before the credits roll. This was shown on only the first printings of this tape and would be removed from all future re-releases after the series would be picked back up, making those original prints extremely rare. This was meant to be the end of Barney's story. When it came back, Barney received a redesign to straighten out any elements that could have appeared frightening to kids and give him a fluffier voice.
Hi, Derek. I'm glad to meet you.
But they'd still show that first iteration in the new intro.
Derek is in Barney's club and Adam has a ticket. But Mom has never seen him 'cause she doesn't know our secret.
That first Barney having those 3 tapes to then be redesigned entirely only adds credence to those tapes being in their own world. Despite containing the same cast of characters, the feel and tone of those stories were unlike anything that succeeded them. Almost as though they were set in an entirely different universe, where Barney looked and behaved differently than what we all knew. Barney ended up becoming popular in the Texas area, Texas being where Barney was filmed, and you could often find him at birthday parties, sing-along events, schools, and hospitals.
It wasn't a typical morning at Children's Medical Center of Dallas. After all, how often is it that you awaken to find a purple dinosaur waving at you? This is Barney, the star of the hit children's video Barney and the Backyard Gang. Today it was Barney and the Hospital Gang. Some of these children will spend Christmas in the hospital. Barney's on a mission to bring Christmas to them. He's visiting 4 hospitals in Dallas and Fort Worth.
Even after being redesigned multiple times, this Barney would still be brought out to different occasions if no other costume were available. What's crazy to think about is that for years and years and years, those first home videos were all we had as proof that this Barney existed. No videos floating around, no images, just the footage here.
The initial marketing strategy, give the tapes away for free. Where? Preschools. Why? Cheryl needed to answer 3 questions. Would the schools play it? Would the kids like it? Would the parents buy it? The answers, yes, yes, yes.
So it was that behind-the-scenes marketing. It wasn't starting at the top and trickling down with the marketing. It was starting at the bottom, at the actual child, and then building from the ground up.
But over time, and as the Barney fan community grew, cast and production started to come out, giving their experiences. People would post online about having met Barney in the 80s, and unearthed images would be brought into the world. And once this happened, it became very quickly apparent just how primitive this Barney truly was. He wasn't meant to hold up longer than those first videos, and just about any time you'd see him outside of them, he'd appear more and more deteriorated. Yet, they still used him. It didn't matter what Barney looked like. It was the heart inside. Kids didn't particularly care that he looked horrible. They just wanted to see their friend. His essence was still there. To this day, we're still finding new photos and video of Barney that have never been seen before. And anytime it happens, it feels like discovering a stone that's yet to be documented.
Goodbye, Tina. Remember, I'm always here. And if you need something special, all you have to do is make a wish, and I'll be there.
I know, Barney. That's why you're so special. Love you.
Love you too.
The first Barney is so mysterious and elusive. The costume was destroyed sometime in the early 90s as it would become too much of a hassle to keep around, especially with how the brand took off. The new information we've been receiving on this Barney is so incredibly important, as Barney finally has a place online to call home. The fan community has been endlessly dedicated to documenting his history. Andrew Olson even has a series showing his quest to find the original Barney plush used in those first tapes, as only one was made and seems to still be lost over 35 years later. That's how serious the loss of Barney's history really is.
Pretending is fun, Mom, but we sure miss our make-believe friends when they're gone.
Well, sweetheart, they're not gone. They're always with you. You know when your real friends have to go home? Well, your make-believe friends will always be around for you to play with. They're both important.
Barney's history is a book, and for many years it laid with pages upon pages left blank. But now, they're finally being filled in. A Day at the Beach, The Backyard Show, and 3 Wishes were stepping stones. Roots, a time that should never be forgotten. Everyone has a Barney, and everyone's Barney looks different, and that's what makes him special. Barney is a dinosaur from our imagination, and no matter the appearance, his presence is always felt. Friends are forever, whenever they're make-believe.
Bye, I'll miss you. And every time I see the moon up in the sky, I'll wave to you. Bye. Bye.
Oh, okay. Surprise! Oh, no, wait. Surprise! No, wait. Surprise! Oh,
Hi, my name's Jessica Marie Zuka. I played Tina on Barney and the Backyard Gang for many years. I want to send a special shout out to all of our fans. Thanks for loving Barney and the Backyard Gang, singing along, and never forgetting imagination can take you anywhere.
What imagination?
And you're watching HEDGE on Stage, all aboard the Rainbow Line.
Gotcha.
Hey, everyone! I hope you enjoyed the show.
What happened? During the release time period of the first 3 VHS tapes of the Barney franchise, you could find the dark purple dinosaur appearing at various events across the Texas area. After the initial belief that the series may not have taken off following those home videos, popularity began to rise. This prompted a near immediate decision to keep the production rolling. In 1990, the Lions Group would begin the release schedule of 3 new home videos, first putting out the 4th installment of the Barney and the Backyard Gang series, this being Barney's Waiting for Santa.
1, 2, 3.
Waiting for Santa marked many firsts for the franchise, most notably Barney's complete 180 in regards to his physical appearance. Mentioning in the previous outing my initial fear of the original Barney upon first glance, seeing this Barney for the first time never frightened me, but more so left me confused.
Five Nights at Freddy.
The Lions Group and Irene Corey went to work at softening the attributes of the character after receiving feedback. Barney's color is now a much lighter shade, a bright magenta as opposed to a deep royal purple. His chin, rounder. In fact, his nose is now also rounder, no longer boxy, and now remains firm, preventing any possible damage and floppiness from movement unlike before. Just about everything in terms of his design has become softer, and again, rounder. For better or worse. For instance, now his eyes appear larger, with his eyelids being a different shade of purple than the body itself. The empty openings above the eyelids that were present on the previous costume are now a lot more visible and apparent, with the body color being so much lighter. The eyes are still movable, however, we never see the eyelids blink all the way. The closest we get are in the second home video of this run, Campfire Sing-Along, in which the suit performer can be seen attempting to close the eyelids not quite making it all the way. Suit performer David Voss and voice actor Bob West both returned to reprise their roles, and both also working to heighten their performance as well. In tandem with the design change of the character, not only does West raise the pitch of Barney's voice,
Hi, kids. I'm Barney the Dinosaur. Guess what? Now you can join my fan club.
but Voss also becomes more nimble in this iteration, swaying back and forth with nearly every line.
Barney! Oh, Barney, you hurt me!
I sure did, Tina.
I don't think I've ever gotten over the somewhat uncanny nature of this iteration of Barney, and I know a lot of people surely have their fondness for him, being that Barney's Waiting for Santa for a good while was the best-selling home video in the franchise. For me, however, it always felt strange, as if you could tell that even for the time, he wouldn't be around for all that long at all. In fact, early box art for the home video, Barney in Concert, a tape to be released after Barney Goes to School, featured a stock promo shot of this Barney on the cover, only for an entirely new costume to premiere at the event's taping, one that would continue on with the franchise for years, essentially leaving this one in the dust. This Barney, much like its predecessor, would make appearances at different select events throughout the year. What's interesting is that even though he'd be present, on the flyers for some events would either be artwork or a photo of the first Barney instead. It really was a game of chance on whether the correct Barney would appear on the paper or not, as it seemed to be whichever costume was more readily available. Keeping in mind that the set of videos this costume featured in were released in April, May, and August of 1990, and these in-person appearances happened all throughout. You could find 1990s Barney all the way into 1991, which is fascinating in a lot of ways. For one, this is the year that yet another new Barney costume would be unveiled, one we have yet to cover as it would stay with the series for a long time. Even still, 1990s Barney would show up on the VHS covers for Barney home videos that he did not appear in. When the older tapes would see re-releases, and even when newer ones came out, you'd find him at the top left with a photo making it very apparent that it's not at all a promo image, but instead a shot of the costume on a stand with no person inside of it. It's also sort of strange in the sense that when you look back at the covers for the first 3 videos of the franchise, Barney is featured very prominently on each and every one. However, with this new set of 3, Barney was only featured on a rare variant of Waiting for Santa, as opposed to the widely released version, off to the side for Barney's Campfire Sing-Along, and nowhere on Barney Goes to School, not even on the back of the box. Not to speak for anyone, of course, but it almost felt as though they didn't want him on the box in a way. Goodness me, even the logo for the series remained exactly the same after the redesign, they just lightened it a bit. Over time, this costume would begin to fall apart, though not as publicly or dramatically as the previous iteration that we know of. To be clear, in 1991, if you count the cheaper costume used at certain events, there were at least 4 different versions of Barney the Dinosaur roaming around, and they were all official. It wouldn't be long before we'd hit the Barney that the world became most familiar with, but for the time being, the franchise was in a bit of a transitional phase. Barney's appearance had yet to fully gain its true identity and would change drastically even in just one short year. I truly believe you never forget the first time you saw this version of Barney appear when a tape is put in. That's the effect that Barney and the Backyard Gang had, but regardless of the look, it was still Barney. His personality lent the lenience of the crew being able to fix his appearance so effortlessly and without issue with its viewer base or the parents. On the inside, it was still the character that we all loved. They'd get there eventually. It's only make-believe.
Well, that's a wrap. See you next time.
Gotcha! 1991, following the releases of Barney's Waiting for Santa, Campfire Sing-Along, and Barney Goes to School on VHS, the series continues to build itself up. In fact, a new costume was already being built, one to replace what we'd just been getting accustomed to, and one that would eventually take full hold of the soon-to-be franchise for years to come. Now, where were we? Oh, right, the Backyard Gang, or rather the finale of it? On May 2nd, 1991, the Lions Group struck a deal with PBS to bring Barney and his friends to public television, However, the year still had many plans that didn't account for this to roll out right away. Just a few weeks after, they were scheduled to appear in front of a live audience at the Majestic Theater in Dallas, Texas. The event, simply labeled Barney Live, would be professionally taped and released as the next installment of Barney and the Backyard Gang, titled Barney in Concert. Interestingly, this event would mark a few different firsts, one of which being the body performer. After the filming of the previous few tapes, performer David Voss would leave to join the military, meaning Barney for a brief time would be left without a moving soul. In comes David Joyner, a man who had formerly acted as a live mannequin for different occasions.
I wasn't their first pick. They picked a young lady over me. Apparently, she had to do a live appearance and it didn't work out too well, so I was actually offered the position. But of course, I already knew that I was going to get the position because it was already spoken to me. When we got into the studio to shoot the first video, because when I auditioned, it was only to do 2 home videos. They had already done like 8 videos before I came on board, and it was to do 2 more home videos. When we were in the studio shooting that first video, I said, man, if this thing ever gets on television, it's going to go crazy. Not knowing at the time they were negotiating a deal with PBS to get it on television.
Another first would be the costume itself, and one arguably creating the biggest deviation from its previous iterations to date. Barney bursts from the curtains with an energy we'd not known previously, as well as a new look. This Barney was intuitive in more ways than one. For one, the outer foam of the body is now covered in purple fleece as opposed to spray paint, meaning the cast no longer had to worry about hugging what felt like sandpaper and can be met with something more akin to a soft teddy bear. His feet are entirely new and look a little bit less bony, for lack of a better word, with a much appreciated approach to appearing cute. Barney appears slightly more boxy around the face, with the cheek area being more pronounced than before. Matter of fact, the biggest number of changes lie all in the face. Where before Barney's tongue would be its prominent color with a vision hole in the back for the performer, the tongue is now a black mesh, allowing vision throughout its entirety. It's been discussed that originally Barney could blink through puppeting the eyelids, something that proved more difficult in the 1990 iteration. Now, a mechanism had been put in place similarly to baby dolls you could find on store shelves. Whenever Barney would leap into the air or bend down, the eyelids would follow with gravity, meaning anytime Barney is active, he appears much more lively without the need for reaching up into the eyes with a hand, although that option would still be available. Speaking of keeping the hands free, the costume is now fitted with what would be labeled as the bite bar.
To move Barney's mouth, there's a bar connected to the bottom jaw that was padded with a sponge that I bit down on to grab the sponge. And I would nod my head up and down to move Barney's mouth.
Oh, just to move his head. So he's constantly moving. So you're like...
Although it appears Barney in this live event speaks by bobbing around with gravity doing its thing, the bite bar can be seen in use at different points in the show during low activity. David Joyner would step into this role with a fierceness like never before. I will refrain from going too in depth as there's a video covering that will be in the description, but what he brought to the franchise cannot go unnoticed. Not long after this concert, the Lions Group would film what would become the final tape in the Backyard Gang series, this being Rock with Barney. Rock with Barney sees the costume from before returning, and now we get to see that bite bar fully in action.
That's right, Tina. Sounds like you've been learning a lot at school these days.
There are also moments where we're given front row seats to some slight issues that the costume needed tuning up before the eventual jump to television, notably in the eyes. The installed blinking mechanism proved visually stimulating, however, at different points the eyelids would either rest too high, giving Barney a wide stare, or blink too hard, sending the eyelids all the way back almost entirely. Nevertheless, it seemed as though the production crew knew they had a winner on their hands in terms of Barney's current design. This would be the baseline, and with some proper fine-tuning, they'd be on their way. And so they set off, with Rock with Barney being the final release of the Backyard Gang series. Their hands were freed enough of the home video releases for the time being, and could now work on what the world would become most familiar with, Barney's tenure on TV, Barney and Friends.
Barney is a dinosaur from our imagination, and when he's tall, he's what we call a dinosaur sensation.
Airing in 1992 would be season 1 of Barney and Friends and Barney's familiar face. Although the previous designs would appear from time to time outside of the show due to the home video series being all that Barney had at the time, The Barney we knew from season 1 would be absolutely everywhere. He'd be on TV, he'd be in TV spots and filming promotionals for PBS.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I'm Barney the Dinosaur. What does your child like most about Barney and Friends? I'm Barney the Dinosaur, and these are some of my friends. We want to be your friends, too. Join Barney and Friends here on Channel 17.
Anytime the Backyard Gang would see re-releases from this point forward, his face would be plastered onto the top left of the box despite him being nowhere in the video itself. All of the artwork that came out of this year would feature Barney drawn in a design reflecting this new costume. And a beautiful decision it turned out to be, as this costume became cemented in the minds of many as a nostalgic centerpiece. The eyelids had been worked on, now resting further down than they had before, unlikely to go off course and keeping Barney focused. David Joyner returns along with Bob West and harbor a working relationship that not only gave Barney the personality we know today, but proved a massive achievement in suit performance and voice work done in tandem. In the beginning, it was a little rough.
And you can keep it if you want to, but the more you share love, the more you'll have.
However, you can see the kinks working themselves out as time moves along, and it's genuinely somewhat inspiring.
Okay, oh, a birthday party for me? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Barney and Friends would run for about 30 episodes, go through a very brief cancellation phase before having itself picked up again for a second season after immediate outcry from parents at home. Barney was on a roll, and it was clear that this Barney would not be going anywhere. For ease of reference, we'll call him Star Barney. After the first season would be a 40-minute long home video special titled Barney's Magical Musical Adventure.
Wherever I go, I always know my home is a castle to me.
Following this would be the start of the second season, and lo and behold,
Barney comes to play with us whenever we may need him. Barney can be your friend too if you just make believe him.
Barney and Friends Season 2 kicked off in 1993, and by this time, the costume that originally appeared at the tail end of Barney and the Backyard Gang had been around as the main face of the franchise for 2 years. Now, while this may not sound like the longest time, keep in mind I said it was the main face of the franchise. Although the Irene Corey Production house would create multiple versions of this costume to replicate its look and be used for different occasions, anytime you'd see Barney on camera for an official outing, it would be Star Barney. His design so cemented that the studio Barney plush for the series would see a slight revamp to better accentuate the costume's features in comparison to what we'd seen in Season 1. This is the exact same costume from its first appearance in 1991. This is very evident from a variety of visual and anecdotal aspects. For one, it was confirmed many years later from those who worked on the production at different points that Barney costumes would often need to be repaired as David Joyner's performance proved so energetic that at times fixing it up was essentially mandatory.
Because the original Barney, the guy that wore it, was so rough in it that he kept breaking it. It would tear apart.
Another place we can look is at photos taken around this time. In certain high-quality images, especially those featured in magazines, you can actually see what appears to be sweat buildup in the stomach and arm area of Star Barney. Season 2 of Barney and Friends, however, would feature the best notable instances of this wear and tear. Across the series, you can see the fleece of the costume balling up more than usual. Although the fleece has always appeared very fuzzy in this iteration over the years, it becomes much more apparent near the end of the season, appearing almost distracting. The eyelids also seem to have some slight trouble carrying out their blinking function, with the color of the eyelids coming off somewhat more faded than before. It also needs to be stated that just like the previous year, Star Barney would be everywhere.
Friend here is going to tell you what's in store for today. Come on over here, Barney.
Oh, hi, everybody. Hi, Patrice.
Good morning. How you doing, Barney?
Oh, I'm great. I'm so glad to see you. Oh, we've got a lot of fun planned for today. We're going to see some of my favorite Barney and Friends shows. Plus, we're going to see the world premiere of Barney in concert. Oh, boy.
At live events,
We're going to have lots of fun because we're going to sing some of our favorite songs. Now, is everyone ready to sing?
at award shows.
Well, Barney, I think we better get down to business and present the award for Outstanding Animated Program.
Oh, that sounds super duper!
Gee, Barney, I wish you'd cheer up a little bit.
At Bill Clinton's inauguration, promotionals, and even the morning news.
Hi, Barney. How are you? Oh,
Boy, I'm so happy
You know
to
what?
be here, huh?
Be responsible. And in fact, since the election...
Shucks, I don't know much about that sort of thing.
But you do know how to say, now it's time for the weather with Willard, don't you?
Why, I think so. Now it's time for the weather with Willard. Hi, Bart.
Star Barney was all over the place for what is seen as Barney's biggest heights. At that point, at least. Star Barney was the nostalgic link for a lot of people, a costume design that just screams the 90s, a time long gone, but a time remembered nonetheless. David Joyner and Bob West honed their skills together and created a Barney that the world remembers most today. They used this design until they couldn't anymore, and the following year of 1994, at least in terms of being the official face, he would be retired. Not forgotten, but retired, for a new design that would come in for one of the biggest years in the franchise's history.
Now it's time, snuggle up, little one.
In 1994, a radio show titled Bedtime with Barney would air spanning multiple radio stations across the country. The show, hosted by Barney himself, originally aired primarily on Sunday nights until eventually being upped to 5 nights per week. Throughout the 10-minute show, Barney would read out bedtime stories to kids as it would normally air at the start of night. Over 40 different bedtime stories would be read out by Bob West as Barney up until the show's conclusion the year following. Also in 1994, the Lions Group would secure a deal with NBC, allowing Barney to premiere a new video special in a primetime slot. Continuing with the theme of preparing children for bed with story reading, as well as the time this new special would air, the new outing was fitted with a name best suited for its premise. It would land on television, premiering live on NBC to millions on April 24, 1994, under the name Bedtime with Barney, Imagination Island. To add on to this, in the same year, the Lions Group planned and set in motion for a live concert show similarly to the one held at the Majestic Theater 3 years prior, but this time at New York City's Radio City Music Hall. With this Broadway spectacular, as well as Barney's upcoming primetime special, it seemed like no better time to prepare and unveil a new look for the Purple Dinosaur.
Oh boy, here we go.
The selling of Barney brings in millions to its creator, the Lions Group. 2 years ago, 6 employees worked on Barney. Now, the company has 250.
Surpassing the year of 1993, the height of Barney mania was upon us. The TV series had been running for just 2 years, the franchise having 5 years under its belt, and toys flying off the shelf. This following year would prove to be one of the biggest and most impactful of the character's lifetime, and with past big events, this meant a newfound change in Barney's appearance. At this point, the Lions Group required numerous Barney costumes to keep up the demand of the TV series and public appearances. However, the difficulty in creating multiple Barney costumes that looked identical to each other was beginning to show itself more and more to the costume designers.
For a ton of brand new kid-sized fun, you can join Barney.
Each suit had been made entirely by hand with an aluminum frame in the head, molded into the shape of what Barney's skull should look like. This being the case, the crew wound up time and time again with costumes that had the appearance of the Barney we all knew, but with certain aspects being slightly off, some even being deemed unacceptable to be shown on camera for filmed material. This is partially the reason why what we referred to as Star Barney was used for so much longer in official media than it ever really should have been. It was clear that something had to change, some new innovation had to be made. The innovation in question being that of a skull made out of fiberglass. It was thought that if a standard skull in the shape of Barney's head were created and crafted in a durable material as a mold, that mold could then be essentially mass-produced for the benefit of keeping Barney's head being the same shape and fit each time during the creation process. The true test, of course, would be to put it into motion, to see just how well it would hold up in an official capacity. That time would come soon in the form of the 2 specials mentioned earlier. Both of these specials, later released as physical home videos, would make their mark as they both debuted and touted a Barney that became well beloved to the world for the first time. Just as Barney debuted his then new look through the red curtains of a live show back in 1991, the same would happen again 3 years later with a much refined Barney the Dinosaur. Just off first glance, it's very apparent how much sleeker he is compared to his previous incarnations. Right off the bat, we can see the benefits of having that pre-made skull used as a base, as the head already has a more streamlined look. And this even flows throughout the rest of the costume.
Thank you, 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 thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Whereas before, Barney's eyes had somewhat of a sunken appearance, with dark openings around the eye sockets, the eyes now are plunged more cleanly, nearly eliminating those dark areas, and with the blinking mechanism being much smoother and more active. The eyelids are also much shinier and vibrant, the baggy nature of the body gone in favor of a more snug-fitting sculpt. Everything about the body of this character that may have seemed excessive before has been trimmed down, slightly more compact. The only real oddity about this costume being the mouth, and how seemingly stiff its operation comes across visually.
Tall ships, the open sea, and an island adventure. Wow! Boy, oh boy, oh boy, I'm having fun!
Outside of this, it's genuinely fascinating just how well the design team was able to sculpt a Barney from scratch, improving on its previous evolutions so effortlessly. The fiberglass skull mold would prove so impactful in the making of Barney that it continued to be a mainstay, its next stop being the next season of Barney and Friends. Unlike seasons 1 and 2 of the TV series, airing a year apart from each other, 1994 served as a break from the show to focus on these 2 other important projects, as well as settling a lawsuit that we're not gonna discuss that today. However, in 1995, the show would return with season 3, and yet another new variation of Barney, or rather, about 3 more.
Oh yeah! Hi everybody!
The main hero costume we see for Barney in season 3 appears prominently during the opening sequence and many episodes including the season premiere.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy!
The differences between this version and what we'd previously seen in 1994 are very nuanced, as the head mold being reused does its job perfectly, keeping each new Barney from deviating too harshly. However, the biggest differences do all lie in the head, and will be the case moving forward, particularly in the eyes. In season 3, you can mainly tell what costume is being used just by how sunken the eyes are placed, the hero suit being more so than the 1994 iteration. This suit is beautiful in its usage, even being used for the cast photo, photographs with the individual kid actors, postcards, TV spots, and promos.
Whoop-de-doo. Hi everybody, I'm so glad to see you. Watch me every day on WETA. Boy oh boy.
Despite this, season 3 would be the first to include more than one version of the Barney costume throughout multiple episodes of its run. Another version having the eyes a bit more sunken in appearance, with the face being boxier and a wider mouth, much akin to the season 1 variant. Another costume we'd see later on in home videos from 1996 and 1997, having a similar look to the hero costume from season 3, but with the eyelids no longer being a shiny material, and instead covered in the same fleece as the body.
Well, come on, you guys. Look.
The head sculpt made so much of a difference in the history of Barney's official costumes and proved to be a massive turning point. From here onward, although his appearance would continue to change over time, the differences would never be as drastic as they had been in the years prior. Barney has never looked sleeker than he did in the mid-90s, and the team tasked with refining his appearance worked day and night to ensure that the character we all loved looked his best no matter where he went. There's still a lot more to go, but the 90s were truly a special time to be around a special dinosaur.
Imagination's fun for you and me.
Amanda, Austin, Brandon, Chaco, Emilia, Helen, Ian, Luke, Matt, Julia Savan.